Hey Gloomies, welcome to today's video. I went to the shops with the sole purpose of trying to find watercolor crayons, which I didn't actually find. I found the Mont Marte Twistable colors, which is kind of like crayons, but not really. They are actually water-soluble sticks, if I can call it that. They're like gels almost. And they were really cool because you can actually apply water to it. While I was at the store, I also came across the Lyra graphite pencil, and I am obsessed with anything to do with Lyra, so I had to purchase it. I did get the thinnest or the smallest size they possibly had, and I tried it out on my sketchbook to see what it was like just doodling a quick horse. I found that the graphics pencil is a lot bigger than I actually expected it to be, so I kind of struggled to get all the fine detail in, but I was quite impressed by the fact that you could shade it quite well, almost as well as any other graphics pencils, and it was less messy as well. It left less residue on my fingers than most. So I'm adding this graphite pencil to my arsenal of tools. But now let's get into the video of reviewing the twistable colors as well as my picture book. Okay, so I bought the 37-piece pack because I wanted more variety than just I think the 24 and the 12 piece, even though they were slightly cheaper. I think I spent 500 Rand on this 37-piece from P&A. I'm not sure what the equivalent would be at Amazon, but I'm pretty sure you can buy this on Amazon as well as other art stores wherever you are based. It came with a paintbrush and a total variety of different colors, including gold and silver. So, pro tip, whenever you get new art supplies, always create swatches for it. So the first test I did was I wanted a simple swatch just to see what every single color would come out like, because while what you see is not exactly what you get, so you always have to test out all of your paints, watercolor pans, your brush pens, whatever you're using, always create swatches for it. And try to number them as well. I don't know, from just my ease of use, I tend to mark them down with a permanent marker from like 1 to, I don't know, 37. Then underneath each of those swatches, I would number them according to the number I put on the pins with the permanent marker. It's just easier for me to actually refer back to instead of going back and forth, trying to figure out what reference number it is. And when I say for a brush pen pink, I'm like, there are different varieties of pink. What did I mean? Pro tip, always create swatches. So as I was busy with my swatches, I was really impressed with all the different colors that I had. It was pretty much like a rainbow of different colors. If I had to draw the ocean, I would pretty much have all of the colors that I need. And the pigments came out really lush and full of color and vibrancy. So once I was done with that test, and as you can see, like even the silver and the gold kind of has like a bit of a shimmer to it. It didn't come out quite as much as I wanted it to, so if I had to add something like gold or silver to my artwork, most likely would just use my finger wax details or even like the Copic paints that you can get from Amazon. So after I was finished with that test, the next thing I wanted to do was try to blend two colors against each other. I wasn't trying to find the matching colors like, I don't know, blue and yellow make green, and I wasn't using any colors in particular. I was just going for it, and I wanted to see how it would first go with the paintbrush. And unless the paintbrush is wet, not gonna really work. So if I use the finger, you really have to rub it. Like, it is glued to that paper. And it was quite thin paper. It was probably less than 190 GCM. It was like the typical paper that you'd find in a sketchbook. So I don't think it blends quite so well on that type of paper. I would like to test it out on maybe watercolor paper specifically, or maybe even the marker paper. I haven't actually tried it on that, so I will definitely make a video of the paper tests with the Mont Marte Twistable colors. But so far, I don't think it blends quite well. I don't know, maybe if you wet your finger and then try blend it, but I feel like that would kind of be like, you know, pointless when you're trying to actually blend the two colors together. So, and also when you're taking a darker pigment color with a lighter pigment color and you blend them together, the dark obviously would overpower the light, so you always have to like add a second application to the lighter color to blend it even more. But then when I added two really dark pigments together, it kind of didn't blend at all. So I don't know, it could have just been the piece of paper that I was using at the time. So definitely gonna give other paper a test for my swatches. The third test I wanted to do was the water blend. I wasn't mixing two colors together to blend them together with water. That probably would be a very good fourth test, which I didn't actually do. So I just took random colors and I kind of wanted to see what it would look like when you add a bit of water. I didn't use the water brush that they provided in the kit because I'm kind of more comfortable with using my own aqua brush because I can control the flow of how much water is used. I can choose whether I want more water or less water. It's just a lot easier for me to do. So when I was doing this test, I did notice that the pigments stick to this particular type of paper. Some of the pigments work well where you add water to it and it blended, and you were able to go from a very dark to a very light shade, but I felt like it would stick to the paper a bit too much, and it wouldn't actually, when you add water to the pigment, it wouldn't trigger it to release from the paper. It could have been the sketch paper that I was using, so it probably would be a good idea to try different types of paper. I will do another video of all the different tests of the paper, or like what paper I would probably choose to use, but the best type of paper to use as a watercolor artist is over 300 GCM, and it has to be 100% cotton because it tears less and it absorbs more of the water, and you can do really fun things with it. It doesn't like warp as badly as some. I also found that the pigment was quite strong. That be careful when you're using your water brush to make sure that it's clean before you dip it into the other colors, otherwise it gets quite blotchy and messy. That was pretty much the test. I was quite impressed with the colors and how like fluid and easy it was to use. So these are all the coloring pages I have created up to today. I only started making or designing these coloring page illustrations maybe about a month or two ago. Someone told me that my designs are really amazing, that I could sell them as postcards, or even, you know, sell them as digital prints on Etsy. Even my sister and my dad totally agreed with that when I started making them Christmas cards. So I started looking into creating coloring books because I have been collecting them non-stop. Every single time I see them in a store, I always buy them. The coloring books for the horses were never quite what I wanted, so the coloring book that I created was a realistic role play. The next book that I'm creating is an ode to South Africa. So these are the different creations I've made so far. I have a plan to create 34 different types of birds, and also an explanation of each and every single type of bird, where they're found, everything like that. This particular bird, I don't think you'd find anywhere else in the world. It's called a Helmeted Guineafowl. And They are a very well-known game bird in South Africa. They're mostly all over the whole of Africa, so they're quite common and they flock in hundreds. If you are in the middle of Kailani, it is extremely rare not to see these birds just passing you by with their little babies. So their plumage is blue-gray with a bunch of white spots. Their heads actually vary geographically, but generally the head is actually naked blue and red with its little red cheek wattles, and it has like a pale yellow casque on its crown. The male has a prominent, a larger casque than the female, and the juvenile, well, they're pretty small, but they have like brown plumage, so not like the blue-gray plumage that you'd see with the adults. And their habitat is pretty much grassland, woodland, savanna, the fields, you name it. They're basically the typical game bird you'd find in southern parts of Africa. They are extremely common, so if you ever come to Savannah and you go on a game drive, these birds you would definitely see. The voice that they make is kind of very loud, like a kikika, monotonous, very repeated sort of like alarm note, kind of weird noise. I don't know. You're gonna have to listen to it on YouTube. Don't trust the voices that I use, because I mean, that was just shocking. But yeah, so these are definitely my favorite types of birds to just have fun with when I take my horse on out rides. They're pretty much the most typical bird you would see when you take your horse on an outride. Now, while I was busy working on it, I did notice that the paper was warping. I would like to try different type of paper, because unfortunately the one that I had on hand and that what I printed it on was kind of probably about like a 200 or 190 GSM, so it's not quite great. I did notice that I had to do 2 applications of black in order for the pigment to like really come out and send out, because I mean this guinea fowl has really, I mean, I say that the plumage is blue-gray, but really it kind of looks like black when you're, you know, looking at it in real life. You'd have to be like up close to really see that it's kind of blue-gray. But the one thing that I struggled with is this bird was really hard to draw, and it was really hard to paint because of the goddamn white spots. Like, there is a kind of like a particular order to how they have their spots. It is insane. So I mean, this process took me about 30 minutes just to do the spots. You wouldn't think so, because this video is busy going on like a speed run, but you had to also kind of have the flow of the spots according to the feathers of the bird, because I noticed that while I was working on it and comparing it to the book that I had, which is called A Comprehensive Illustrated Field Guide of Birds of Africa South of the Sahara. It is a Chamberlain book. You could probably find it on Amazon. It's also probably updated, because this is quite an old book that I'm using as a reference guide. So what I tried to do is I did a first layer of white spots, and then I started doing more of a second application of the feathers, of just the ends of the feathers, because towards the end of the feather is actually it gets thick with all the spots. Once I had finished that, I worked on the feet, which kind of looked very similar to the body, so it was also quite like black-gray, and it has white sort of scales, like grey scales is kind of what it looks like. And when they run, they have this like really weird run. They kind of look like they're running a marathon. They're really stretching themselves out there. The next thing I did was I just referenced what the head looks like with, you know, the naked blue kind of look as well as the red cheek wattles. And then I tried to find the perfect colors for it. So that's where your swatches and numbering comes really important, because I didn't number all the photos, all the swatches and the pens with a permanent marker like I usually do, so it was a bit difficult to tell which color would be perfect. But you kind of want to find a pale blue, but not too pale, because it's actually the pigment of the head actually is quite like bright blue. It's a little bit pale in some places, but you can add like white to it. And then you have to find the right kind of red. So it was like a bright color of red to it. And when you look at this picture of all the other different kinds of, you know, guinea fowls that you would find, one of the things that falls under a guinea fowl list is actually a Congo peacock, which I did not know, which actually is pretty fascinating. So if you've ever seen the blue of a peacock, then that is kind of the blue that you'd be going for, like a palish kind of blue you'd be going for the guinea fowl. Also, when you're working on the crown, this guy probably, I think I made him as a male because his crown was very prominent and he had like these little cheek wattles, but you kind of have to be careful because the beak was yellow. Also, by the way, what is landing on my table is considered biltong. I'm not sure you have the same thing in your country, but it is a staple diet for South Africans. It's the best type of dried meat you will find on this earth. America's beef jerky does not even come close. And if you're in the UK, don't forget to go check out South African store or whatever it's called. And they will kind of have biltong. It won't be as amazing as the biltong you find in South Africa, but ever you're in South Africa, definitely go and get yourself some biltong to try. So yeah, this is pretty much the finished piece of my guinea fowl. I'm pretty happy with how he came out. It was really realistic because when I showed Nanya, she freaked out. Her and Sunji had a bit of a run-in with a flock of guinea fowls they were trying to chase, which actually turned against them. So every single time she sees these birds, she wants to run for the hills. So I'm pretty impressed with how it came out. The colors blend quite nicely, so I would definitely give the Mont Marte Twistable colors a try.